Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House, and this is actually the rising tide tonight. And Antonio Reid is and his guest, who I am going to let him introduce you to because I'm going to take myself off for this show. So, Tony, take it away for your rising tide. No sound. Wait. Gotta fix the sound. Shit. Okay, it's on. Go.
Okay. So we wanted to have a conversation about social programs, the benefit of having social programs in a society, what it means to achieve a certain level of social programs in a society. Um, and we wanted to have this conversation kind of in lieu of the fact that, speaking now mainly for myself, but I think Paul agrees that, the options that we have before us today, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, do not represent vehicles that are going to get us the sort of progress that progressives have been fighting for, such as universal health care through a Medicare for all system, or robust tuition-free college program, debt forgiveness program, a Green New Deal government job guarantee program. So I wanted, instead of talking about the differences of Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the Republican and the Democrat, to really explore the value of having social programs in a technologically advanced society.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So the first thing I think we should talk about is kind of, maybe the history or why countries pursue social programs, what it means for a country to do so. The idea of social programs go back really to Aristotle, and Socrates, and we'll focus, I think, for this conversation mainly on the modern era, since that's most relevant to people. But the idea of a social program is that individuals live in a society, and in this society, they're living amongst other individuals. And so, in order for us all to live peacefully, in order for us to live in a way that we can facilitate commerce and prosperity, we engage in a social contract. And this contract has in its basis a sort of social connectivity that allows the society to live robustly. So, Paul, can you just respond to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the nobles, for example, just use Europe as an example, ran the show. I mean, you had the kings, the royalty running the show, followed by the nobles. And then in England's case, which America so closely models, we had instances where the peasantry rose up and through actions such as the Magna Carta, development of the Magna Carta, and and through Cromwell turning England into a commonwealth as opposed to a turning into a constitutional monarchy. The point is, it benefits those in power in that it keeps the peasantry in check, so to speak, as well. I think, Antonio, that going back to our case here in America, just as the the horrible ravages of the Depression, years of it, really led to the political environment which could allow the New Deal really to be implemented. I mean, the New Dealists at that time were labeled communists, just as today we label Bernie Sanders programs as socialists. I mean, we still have the purgatory pejorative names attached to these reformers. Now, I would argue something close to both you and I, Antonio, I know is Medicare for all, and with the ravages we're experiencing now with COVID. I mean, if someone develops COVID, imagine the costs. Even if you do have insurance, Antonio, wouldn't this create a rather convenient time to implement and fully back a Medicare for All program? Just as the Depression really set the stage for the New Deal, which was of course, a smorgasbord of initiatives and social programs to help out the struggling masses.
And I think, you do find in moments of upheaval and crisis, populations push their governments to act in certain directions. And we're certainly here at one of those pivotal points, I think, over the next coming months and years. But looking at trying to understand then, we've been here before. You're talking about the Great Depression. You're talking about FDR, the legacy of FDR, building on the New Deal. And you're talking about Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society. But why didn't we ever achieve that Great Society? The question about a universal single-payer system has been asked since the end of the Second World War in the United States, Harry Truman's dream. Mm-hmm. So it's important, I think, as we talk about, the accomplishments and the benefits, the trade-offs of having universal single-payer systems. I think it's also important to mark the history, because this has been a dialogue that we've been in for over 70 years, right? Mm-hmm. We're not just coming to the table in 2020 discovering the term single payer. This has been a conversation that's been going on for over 70 years that the Democratic Party, the Republican Party have been having and really all out rejecting giving the American people.
Can we look into a little further, Antonio?
Sure.
I think that really the best opportunity or a really good opportunity presented itself at the close of World War II, when America experienced unparalleled prestige and financial strength coming out of that war. The rest of the developed world were ravaged by the war, but instead, what happened, at least as far as healthcare was concerned, is that UAW leader Walter Reuther hammered out a deal with, I think it was General Motors at the time, guaranteeing that labor would not strike over a period of contracted years. The idea was to come up with a contract. We will not strike over, say, a 5-year period if you will provide us the following benefits. And of that, included in that was health coverage. And thus began, I would say, what's proven to be a nefarious link between a link between health coverage and your employer. So that was an opportunity missed, I would say, right after World War II, instead of agreeing to that deal. The second opportunity you mentioned was LBJ, who we never did quite meet that Great Society, as you mentioned. One could argue that his involvement in the Vietnam War just destroyed everything, but we don't know for sure. But certainly Vietnam didn't help. and the domestic dollars were divided off and sent off to the jungles of Southeast Asia to fight a ridiculous and ultimately useless war. So we missed two great opportunities, Antonio. And I would say those are the last two opportunities we've had, other than what we're facing today.
Well, no,
COVID.
I'd pause you just right there. We had one other opportunity that hit us, and
Oh, you mean under Obama?
That was under Obama.
Okay, I'll concede that. Go ahead, explain that. Okay,
yeah. So thanks for providing that beautiful analysis of kind of the historical dilemma we faced in the past, but right on up to the present. In 2008 and 9, we had then Senator President Obama talking about in the 2008 Democratic primary process about a single payer. It was incredible. He was saying this on the trail, but as he had gained popularity, as the banks and the insurance industry had begun backing Obama and flooding his campaign coffers, we saw the discussion move away from the word single payer to universal health care. And we saw that universal health care translated into then accessible and affordable care. In the background, what we were seeing, particularly when Obama had come to power, the insurance industries essentially flooded Capitol Hill to flood the White House. And their lobbyists were putting together this grand work, which of course would be an amalgamation of what we saw in Massachusetts, Romney Care, federalized. And we saw Obama, the Democrats, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi at the time, and other Democratic leaders go after people like Dennis Kucinich of Ohio, who was pushing a single-payer system. We've seen Jerry Brown in California halt the process of single-payer over there. And we've seen across the union, Democrats are not just actively failing to implement single payer, but are actively against the implementation of a Medicare for all type single payer system. So we had our chances in 2009 and 10 when we had a supermajority of Democrats in the Congress, in the House and in the Senate. And of course, we had President Barack Obama, and we had, control of the courts, better control of the courts than we do today. And even with, a so-called blue wave Democratic takeover, we still didn't get a single payer system. In fact, I would still say, arguably, we're no closer to Medicare for all than we have been since what you're talking about, FDR's day and Lyndon B. Johnson's day.
Yeah, I mean, you eloquently described that situation, Antonio. So, is it fair for me to say that now, as we're suffering this COVID pandemic, which not only means that we've got a good number of people getting hit by a devastating illness, leading to devastating and possibly catastrophic financial loss, but also what COVID is doing to the economy, which is taking away jobs, thereby severing that very tenuous connection between people's health coverage and their employer. So what better time than now for us to really push a Medicare for all program?
You're exactly right. We saw that other rational countries like Spain nationalized their healthcare industry overnight. They nationalized all their hospitals. We saw other countries pursue similar pathways. And what's really interesting about this is that Medicare for all is estimated to cost $30 trillion over the next 10 years, according to the Congressional Budget Office. But compare that to today's plan, which costs, or not today's plan, we don't have a single plan in the United States. We have a free enterprise system for our healthcare. and the estimated cost is between 50 to 60 trillion dollars over the next 10 years. So we know that we can perhaps get significant savings by moving to a single payer system. We know why we would get those savings moving to a single payer system. We would get those savings because we know that private firms spend 12% administrative costs, whereas governments only spend between 2 and 6%. We know that governments are not engaged in trying to find out who are the people who need healthcare the most, as to deny them coverage. We know that if we didn't have a single payer system, we don't have to worry about are you in network or out network? Is your ambulance in network? Is your ambulance out network? Is that doctor in network?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if we just move to a single payer system, we could more effectively and efficiently deliver healthcare services to our population.
And also, Antonio, we could negotiate. We'd be in a stronger position to negotiate better prices with pharmaceutical companies and with health providers.
So COVID-19 does present us an opportunity, because it makes, healthcare crises now are all around us. Everyone at this point knows someone who's either been affected by COVID-19, maybe a friend of yours has lost a family member due to COVID-19, and surely the health impacts in terms of our lifespans will be affected for years to come. And that will rack up in serious financial costs. I mean, we already see that 500,000 Americans a year go bankrupt and because of medical-related costs and debts. And I was just thinking about that earlier.
It's a ridiculous figure. It really is an amazing, astonishing figure. One of the leading causes, if not the leading cause of bankruptcy.
Right. It's absolutely devastating. It's sort of an indictment against, I want to say this not too religiously, but it's kind of an indictment against the soul, the character of a nation, that you could proclaim yourself to be of the richest nations in the history of human material wealth, not guarantee your people a universal single payer system, and have the sort of outcomes that we did. It would be one thing if we had a healthcare system that was providing for the entirety of our population at a low cost, and that was the free enterprise healthcare system. But it's exactly the opposite of that. When you look at the OECDs, these are countries that are comparable to the United States. We see the United States has the worst outcomes in terms of costs, and most importantly, the number of lives that are saved every year. We just saw a report during this campaign season from Yale University showing that nearly 70,000 Americans die every single year because due to the absence of health care in their lives, healthcare insurance in their lives. So this is a crisis in the United States that's been spilling over. And really, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed how weak and faulty our healthcare system really is.
And our infant mortality rate's terrible relative to the OECD, Antonio. We've got a large number of our population who really can't afford basic wellness checks, and both for themselves and for their kids and for their families. I mean, it really is disgusting. Now, I'm the first to admit that with Biden, we have a much better chance of getting something put in than with Trump. I don't know if you agree with that, Antonio, but from what I understand, Biden supports some kind of hybrid program which includes private insurance. He stubbornly refuses to take private insurance off the table. Now, the problem with that is that when you have a mix of private insurance and government insurance, as in Medicare and its supplements, the private insurance tends to cover better than the current
Paul,
system.
Just to be clear, for people who are watching, when you say a mix, you're really talking about the same system we have now with a public option. That's what Joe Biden is talking about.
Correct.
He is talking about the introduction of
Correct.
Of a public
But not
option.
to replace,
Right.
but not as replacement, as a supplement. And the
Right.
problem with this, again, is that just as many doctors don't take patients with Medicare because the payout is lower than it is with if you're covered through a handsome private policy, either with a state job or a private company.
Right.
That also serves true for Medicare supplements and so on. Really, so you cannot really have a hybrid program because because again, those with it kind of defeats the purpose of the public option. It kind of defeats it. So I hope he rethinks that. He and his advisors rethink it. But I'm certainly don't believe that it's a big issue for him. I think he's not the answer on this.
Here's what I say about Paul, because you asked me, do I agree that we would get a better workable healthcare system out of Biden than Trump? It's actually really difficult to say, and here's why. Especially in terms of actually achieving our goal of universal healthcare, because Joe Biden and the neoliberal Democrats will advertise the public option as a miniature version of a universal single healthcare system. And what we know, because the Democrats are extremely hostile to the idea of really robust social programs, is that they're going to enable through legislation the corporate insurance companies to essentially have an insurance pool that excludes the most high risk consumers of healthcare. And so the pool of the most high risk insurance consumers will be pushed toward the public option. And because the public option will be overwhelmingly and disproportionately dealing with high risk people, you're going to see it's going to seem that the results are going to be worse than the private insurance companies that will be dealing with pools that they selectively created to be extremely low risk and high reward. And then this will discourage among the public the idea of moving towards single payer altogether. So Joe Biden, the problem with Trump is that we lose single payer Medicare for all for 4 or 8 years under Trump. We lose single payer Medicare for all under Joe Biden for a generation.
Yeah, I think there's some validity to your points there, Antonio. But I don't know how we as a people. I think Boomer, you pointed out the very accurate comment that really it's Congress that determines, that shapes, that forms the bills for a Medicare for all program, not the president. So that is indeed correct. Do you have any response to that, of how does it matter that Joe Biden personally does not favor Medicare for all?
Well, this is what Joe's told us already, and I'll keep us kind of focused on the social program theory, but it's important to see how politicians are trying to handle these ideas. Joe Biden has come out and said to the American public already that even if there was a Medicare for all type system, like the one that Jay Powell or Bernie Sanders are trying to put forth, if that had passed the Senate and the House, he would veto it. Again, this is a man who's extremely hostile to the type of robust social programs that are indicative of that great society that Lyndon B. Hayes Johnson, FDR, Harry Truman saw in their dreams. So I don't know if having, well, I think that's the whole argument here, is that Joe Biden is not the vessel to get us to where we want to be.
So what do we do? Because again, this is a good time with COVID to really address these issues. What do we need to do to push this platform of Medicare for all, Antonio?
Well, it's really sad because the voice that we were supposed to have on our side, our voice, right, our champion, our hero, Bernie Sanders, was supposed to be unapologetically fighting for Medicare for all, and really mobilizing his people. And I know that COVID-19 made that particularly difficult in terms of protests, but we've seen that it's been possible. But the fact that we failed to mobilize behind Medicare for all right now really shows how weak our movement is. Because we were decapitated, the loss of Bernie Sanders, the swift maneuvers of Obama and Podesta and the Clintons and the whole diatribe of the Democratic Party's establishment to undermine Bernie Sanders, Buttigieg, all of them, consolidating the way they did to stop Bernie Sanders getting the nomination was important because Obama understood Medicare for all is a direct threat to his legacy. Obamacare. So what should have happened is a mass mobilization immediately when the COVID-19 crisis struck to get a Medicare for all system.
Right.
And the Democratic Party, the opportunity we missed is that when the CARES Act was originally being passed, there was no public pressure. And that was one thing that Lyndon B. Johnson, working with Martin Luther King, understood, is that he needed public pressure pushing these social programs.
Absolutely.
So when you miss that dynamic, there's another, so we're going through a roller coaster of economic hell, so to speak, right? Right now, we're on the precipice of millions of Americans being evicted from their homes by August, starting August 1. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we're about to experience such an extreme economic fallout will present us with another opportunity to enact radical reform. And push for those type of policies. But we've seen the Democratic Party under Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer just rejected a bill from Bernie Sanders to cut the military budget by 10%. And one of the things I just wanted to show you, Paul, was a graphic of the Trump discretionary budget request in 2019 to show you exactly the type of money that's used in the United States for, as you made the analogy, how the Vietnam War kind of sucked all the money away from social programs.
Right.
The same engine is present today. And the Democrats are mostly right behind it. Right now, the United States is spending over $700 billion.
Ridiculous.
On its military.
Yeah, this is, if that were an income, it's guaranteed, you get guaranteed raises every year because that figure gets raised every year. And
every year. Yeah,
and we're not talking at the rate of inflation. It's raised much higher percentages than that. It's definitely a figure we need to look at. It's definitely something that needs to be targeted. And I don't know, we've lost the momentum, as you said, for our candidate Bernie on this Medicare for all. But they did accomplish one thing, Antonio. I mean, they did manage to put it into the American public consciousness as a possibility. I mean, before Bernie came around with this, it would have been very difficult to mention this stuff without it being just shot down and laughed at right away. Now we just have to put up with a few comments about being socialist and so on. But that represents a big improvement.
I think the left should just completely disregard. Well, I shouldn't even say the left. I think that people who are, because it's actually not a left issue. I think to do that delegitimizes the conversation itself. It is not a left issue in the world when it comes to securing healthcare for populations. It is empirical fact that when the government plays a robust role in providing healthcare, more people have healthcare at a lower cost. That has simply been true in every government that has intervened in this way. The only countries that are not able to replicate this outcome are developing countries because they are not rich enough. They're not prosperous enough. They're not wealthy enough. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the tax base. They don't have the social contract to establish social programs like single payer. The United States does. And the fact that we haven't is depriving our people of a social contract, something that cohesively keeps the population together. And what we've seen from both Democrats and Republicans here is the total vicious assault on our social programs. We're still right now in the state of New York looking at cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. Andrew Cuomo, Democrat. So right now, there's never been a better time to have a single payer system. There's never been a time to make sure that every single American has health care. Right now, the Trump administration, and the Democrats were actually against this, but the Trump administration had actually implemented a sort of quasi-universal single payer system specifically for COVID-19 treatment. Now, there's going to be obviously a backlog of lawsuits because we know that COVID-19 is going to impact people into the future. And you're going to develop respiratory infections, heart disease.
You could also have recurrences of the disease, Antonio. We don't know, right? I mean, if it's a virus like shingles, maybe it reappears every now and then. I mean, we don't know.
Right, and so it's hard to to tell people we're going to temporarily cover this is absolutely absurd. And then from the Democrats to say, oh, we're gonna give you COBRA. Which COBRA increased premiums by 25%. I mean, really, to have the Democrats offer a more conservative plan than Donald Trump, the Republican, it was hard to believe. So right now, I think it's unfortunate because Black Lives Matter kind of shows us the model, but Black Lives Matter is so visceral, right? You can see that when a police officer has his knee on a person's neck, you can see that injustice so clearly, so viscerally. But when we
shout out to Dave Bryce, yeah, absolutely, yeah. As you said, it's very visceral. Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about having healthcare crisis, that's one family at a time. It may be millions at the same time, but they're all individually in their own hospital rooms. Their own homes, talking to their own agents by themselves. And we don't see that toll. And so it's harder for us to visualize that enemy and be able to erect a clear and emotional and intellectual argument against it. So in the absence of that, we have to talk about it abstractly. We got to talk about it intellectually. We got to talk about, Medicare for all costs more or costs less, or Medicare for all saves more lives. But it's hard to really talk about it in terms of, the individuals who are struggling with health insurance agencies and their agents and the impact that has on their individual lives, and the people who don't make it through, the 70,000 a year who die.
In fact, Antonio, if it is one of those viruses that return every now and then when the body's run down, it's actually like a private insurance's dream, in that one then gets sent to the hospital, bigs up, and creates another big bill every few years or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you can get treatment involved. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely, we need a Medicare for all. I mean, this has to be a key cornerstone push for us. And I think personally, Antonio, I'm going to try very hard, at least on my end. I'm going to try and put as many Democrats as I can into the Congress. And maybe through the Congress, we have a chance of getting our message through. I mean, again, we have to come up with something practical, I guess, because as you say, we don't have the visceral impact of the Floyd death, and we've got to keep up the pressure and all this stuff. And let's move on to retirement. That's another. We need to shore up Social Security. I mean, 1 out of 5 Americans have a pension program, and I'm surprised it's even that high. In fact, I bet it's the figure is even lower today. More and more Americans are reliant on Social Security, and that needs to be strengthened. We need to beef up these social programs. And I'm sure you could come up with quite a few others that. Well, what is it that you and I agreed on, Antonio? Wasn't it health, retirement, and what was the third one? I forgot.
Education.
I'm sorry? Education. That's right. We need our education to be covered, or health to be covered. I mean, to be covered for health issues. And we need or welfare at retirement when we get old. I mean, these are the 3 basic tenets one would imagine of a civilized society. And instead, we've got a bloated military and an economic free-for-all. That with a heavily weighted towards the extremely wealthy and the corporations.
You're exactly right, Paul. We're in a system today that completely violates our social contract. And modern advanced, societies do come to the agreement that on the issue of healthcare, we are going to stand behind one another. On the issue of education, we are going to make sure that we raise our people out of the depths of ignorance. And then when it comes to retirement, that you've given your life to the society, you've given your life to the community, we're going to make sure that you can retire in dignity. And that is the conclusion. Think about this is a war that we've been having with, I call the sociopathic maniacs in our money-crazed society. But we had to tell them under FDR, we are going to stand behind our people. We are going to make sure that our people can die in dignity. We're not going to drive seniors to the edge of oblivion by forcing them to pay thousands of dollars a month in pharmaceutical prices. We're not going to
insulin, ridiculous insulin costs. I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So you're right. It's an economic free-for-all. We have allowed our pharmaceutical industry to rip and rave straight through our seniors, take advantage of the most vulnerable among us as a money racket. And I have to say, countries that are able to say enough is enough, countries that are able to say we're going to provide health care for every single one of our people, countries to say we're not going to allow pharmaceuticals to rip off our people, countries that are able to say that are fundamentally different than countries that don't.
Can
Absolutely.
I interject a little bit? I just wanted to bring up one thing because this topic I figured I'd pop in for.
I'm glad
Social Security. And I also want to know, Paul, the payroll tax cut, which is being proposed, is something that will definitely be the beginning of an erosion of Social Security and Medicare, because that is how Social Security and Medicare is funded. A payroll tax, being that I was a payroll professional, is a stupid idea, as is the cap on income to pay FICA. And so I thought you'd give us your thoughts on the payroll tax and you too, Antonio, what is the outcome for that if it passes, and what alternative is there to doing something like that so people have funds? I mean, I'm a believer that, the government can afford to help people and not help these corporations as much, obviously.
Well,
So
Sandy,
take it away,
you clarify
guys.
as to the payroll cut? Is it just for the summer? Is it permanent? I mean, what is the proposal there?
I think the proposal was temporary, but they're going to try to make this permanent. And if you get
True.
a Congress
It's a
for
bad
some
precedent.
god awful reason that's Republican, we're screwed that way. A payroll tax cut does it down the board. It's like, and people say, oh, good, a payroll tax cut. I'll get more money in my check.
Right,
No, you'll
right.
get screwed on Social Security
Exactly.
and Medicare.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's a trick for people as well, particularly people in the working class who need it the most, again, the most vulnerable. Because, I was just explaining to a gentleman the other day, imagine you're a plumber, right? And at the end of your life, you're able to save $175,000. No, excuse me, a lawn care person who cuts grass, and because you're able to save $170,000 in your life. Well, even that type of money to retire on is extremely, without a social net, is our type of economic free-for-all society is still not enough. The number of stories, I mean, just buying insulin, if you had diabetes, $2,000 a month, just buying insulin alone, in 5-10 years time would deplete your entire savings. So we're saying here is that when we cut from the payroll, what ends up happening is that people get a little bit more money. They get a little bit more money today. But even with that little bit more money, even if they were as frugal as they could possibly be and actually put that money to the side, through inflation alone, it would just be withered away. We know the value. Go ahead, Paul.
And Sandy and Antonio, also, much of our economy is a gig economy right now. I mean, you've got people making a living by Ubering, or
they're not even on payroll.
Oh, what's that DoorDash thing, And the thing is that some of it's declared, some of it isn't. Guess what? How much of that is going to the payroll, and working towards their retirement at the end of it all? I mean, so our economy has changed to this kind of like independent a contractor type of arrangement with a false sense of that you really do have a career, that you really, and the damage, and this in itself erodes our programs. And that's big.
It's dressed up, and it's dressed up in this commercial-friendly advertisement.
Own your own business. Work for yourself. Right.
But the average American is just hearing tax cut and thinking they're going to get it, and they don't realize what happened. How can people not know what happened and still support this maniac with the tax cut for corporations where they did not, it was not trickle down. It never is trickle down. And another thing about this is, I guess I'm passionate on this, is the cap, the Social Security cap. So if you make, I don't know what the figure is, 108,000
it's like 120 thing, or 150.
I remember when it was 60, but now it's because I was doing it, with the payroll, and now it's like these people stop. They don't have to pay Social Security after $100,000. So the rest of their income up to millions is not taxed for Social Security. Now, Social Security is taxed, and Medicare is different than federal taxes, which is a completely different. We're not on the cold standard. The federal taxes do not fund federal spending. So, but Social Security and Medicare have to be funded by those two things. So why not also lift that? I mean, there's so many things we could do. Now, could we pressure a Biden administration to do some of those things? Right. Yes, you can, if you vote in progressives in Congress and the Senate. Like Paul said, progressives, and unfortunately, right now they're like the Justice Democrats, that wing of the, But I'm okay. I said my piece. I had to interject in here, even though it's your show.
No, well done, Sandy. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Sandy's spot on that, and brought up some great points. Yeah, absolutely. But certainly, I think the three of us believe in that in that three-legged stool of
Oh,
health, education. We haven't even talked about
wait a
education.
minute.
I
Cheryl
mean,
said they
education
removed the
now.
payroll tax deduction idea from the proposed bill today. Oh, Cheryl, thank you. Well, we'll have to read up on that one. I went through all
Yeah,
this for
thanks
that?
for
Yeah.
For
pointing out.
nothing?
And Antonio, we haven't even brought up the education where in essence we've got a debt for degree model currently. Um, we put our young people in hock and uh, basically unable to take out home loans because their student debt burden is so great. It's paralyzing young people from doing things that they really want to do, that maybe they have to be diverted from a career path to something that pays a little more, but ultimately is less fulfilling for them. It's a very, I think, boy, you talk about bondage. The American people are in bondage. That's who's
Yeah.
in bondage, you know.
And that's, the think about that, moving right on to education, if we can, um, you know, right now, Americans owe $1.6 trillion of student loan debt
Some of it
at
are
3 point.
ridiculous interest rates, I may add, Antonio. You'd be surprised.
Right, I was just about to say 3.5%, 6.8 for some. I mean, and it just really depends. I mean, some of this is private debt, and some of the interest rates are
Yeah, it's
absolutely
based
absurd.
on whatever the bond rates were back when it was fixed,
And not to mention Joe Biden, but Joe Biden, the senator from Indiana. I mean, this was the guy who is probably the number one politician in America who's responsible for the $1.6 trillion of student debt. He made it impossible in the 1990s for people with student loan debt to declare bankruptcy on their student loan debt. He first went after, first it was, oh, you have to wait for 10 years to declare bankruptcy on your student loan debt. And then he just consolidated through a lot of the credit bills that you can't get rid of student loan debt through bankruptcy at all. So now we've in the situation where we are piling on immense amounts of debt that people can't hope to get out of. And oftentimes we see again the population that's saddled the most with this debt are who? Low income, minorities, and most vulnerable populations. And this is absolutely devastating. It used to be that education was a way for people to have social mobility in our society. But now going to college in the United States may actually put you behind
yes,
someone who didn't go.
yes, yeah.
So this is a very dangerous thing. You see, it's a vicious assault. You see the assault on healthcare. You see the assault on retirement. You see the assault on education. I was just told today, talking to Dr. Berg, a professor of sustainability at Appalachian State University, that the Board of Governors have sent out a decree across the UNC system telling schools to prepare for a plan that's going to cut the University of North Carolina school system by 50%. Absolutely the most devastating, catastrophic thing. I've never even heard of such a draconian proposal. Our school system, the UNC school system, is a model school system in the United States, nearly second to none. Maybe the California system's better. But even Condoleezza Rice, a Republican, came to Wake Forest in 2012 and marred at the spectacle that is the UNC system, and to see that the neoliberals would take this moment, turn into a shock doctrine, and threaten to cut the UNC system by 50% is absolutely atrocious.
Well, a lot of universities are going to go under, Antonio. They're going to face a similar situation. It's been predicted that at least 50%. Now, of course, a lot of it depends on foreign students too. I mean, if they start bailing out, and I think some of them are forced to for visa reasons, that's another source of, they had to pay full tuition, obviously.
And here in North Carolina, what's devastating is that the UNC system is the #1 employer in our state.
Yes, this is common. Yes, hospitals and universities, absolutely.
So we're about to be rocked here as we go through a neoliberal transformation. The assault on our retirement, the assault on our education, the assault on our healthcare,
and the assault on our buying power, because the dollar is it's being inflated out of relevancy. And someone pointed out that our currency is falling like a rock. True that. I think it's predicting a downgrade from a credit agency, like a Moody's is going to downgrade federal debt. And see really what happens. I think that's in the works. I really believe.
I say that's where I think we did disagree a little bit on how monetary theory plays out when it comes to monetary evaluation. In my personal opinion, I don't worry so much about inflationary or hyperinflationary effects from quantitative easing or stimulus packaging. So as long as, and I think the way around it, if you're worried about those things, and again, I'm not, but if you are, I think the way around that is make sure that on the physical side, you have commensurate activity. So actually stimulate the economy. And we know how to stimulate the economy. We need to be putting money in the hands of our people so that they can consume, because that's what this type of economy is based off of. So I don't think that for me is not a particular concern. My concern here is this. When the Democrats and the Republicans came together for the CARES Act, what we saw was a dynamic move to eviscerate the social program, is what they've been waiting for, right? The first thing they did was transfer immense amount of wealth straight to the stock market. The Federal Reserve pours trillions of dollars to the stock market. Second thing we see for the CARES Act, the physical response, is that they get $1,200 per person. That did help to some extent keep consumption flowing, and of course the $600 per week unemployment. But what they did there was set up small businesses to fail epically in the United States, which again just completely eviscerates the myth that the United States is for small business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's
what happened.
Shot
was they forced the population off small businesses' payrolls. Okay, large companies have the money to compensate this temporary loss. Small businesses don't. And the Democrat plan was to sustain this. And if you can sustain unemployment given during this crisis, what's essentially going to happen is small businesses, and this is actually according to the Labor Bureau statistics, 70% of all small businesses in the United States are set to fail within a 2-year period.
Absolutely.
This is absolutely devastating. This is a massive, what this will turn out to be, of course, laying the groundwork for a massive reconsolidation of the economy. And
it's interesting, Antonio, just to piggyback on what you're saying. I mean, Amazon stock's been going nuts because, it's the absolute triumph of the online monopoly, as these small retailers get wiped out. And it's really ugly what's happening. I mean, this COVID has really, I think, heightened or inbuilt inequities. It's really heightened. I'm sorry.
And look,
did someone say
Paul,
Amazon?
Yeah.
Paul, you talk about this massive consolidation U.S. economy and how a lot of our healthcare is tied to these companies. Is Amazon going to be giving people healthcare plans? I mean, these are going to be the largest. These are going to be the largest employers in the United States. Walmart, by the way, already is the largest employer in the United States. This is the type of world that we're talking about: bare minimum scrap healthcare plans from these private companies, and situations where our retirement, I fear, is going to be consolidated and given over to the stock market. And we're going to see education continue to be a cluster of the banking industry working with universities to essentially rack in trillions of dollars from the student population.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, Antonio, I really feel for our young population. They're our future. And here we've saddled them with incredible debt, just as my parents were the last generation really to retire with pensions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 60 years old. Sandy's about 40. I'll probably be the last to Sandy and I'll be the last to retire with a Social Security promise. I mean, it's really awful, Antonio. I mean, just we're there's no way that the standard, the quality of life is on a downward spiral, and
so what the heck do we do?
I mean, this is the times have found us. I mean, we are about to experience the historical upheaval in the United States that is going to make us or break us. We've just seen that the Democrats and the Republicans have totally jumped ship. They have abandoned the population, and now the population is going to have a visceral response to that. And it is pertinent that there are activist leaders that are in place with plans so that we can channel a lot of that raw energy the population is going to have. But that is what happens when you dissolve the social contract. It looks like what we've seen in Minnesota. It looks like what we've seen in Los Angeles. It looks like what we've seen across the union in terms of the Black Lives Matter organization, because, of course, you know, minorities are being oppressed, and so they get the brunt of the brutality of this system. But now we've seen that really the system has unleashed the brutality on the whole of the population. So we're there at another pivotal point.
So we need change, and we need change beyond the pace of our normal two-party system right now, it would appear. Now, I'm no political expert, but perhaps, Sandy, you're coming up with the right idea. We just got to load up Congress with as many progressives as possible.
Antonio,
you're right.
You should get involved.
Yeah.
You're the future. And I say it all the time, and I'm your biggest cheerleader. And I'll do anything to help you and other progressives, young progressives. You know, somebody had made a comment to me on one of my live streams because I said the kids are out there now and there's a special flavor of what going on, basically. And then she took offense, or he took offense and said, well, it's like I'm passing the buck. And I said, well, wait, I had to answer. I'm not passing the buck because I've been through protesting against Vietnam and Iraq 1 and Iraq 2, and somewhere we failed. But I see this. The last time I saw electricity like I see now was during the civil rights movement, and I was too young. And so I think there's an opportunity now, even though the long term with climate change, we are WASF. We can't think of the outcome on that, even though the Arctic's melting, even though that we're hearing some horrible things. We're here today, like I always say. And Antonio, people like you are the future.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of wonderful progressives. And I saw Ilhan Omar on TV today, and she makes so much sense. And these people, these women, it's just, to me, I have some excitement over the young people. I want all the old ones like Chucky Schumer to get the fuck out.
Well, I definitely do think that we do have, if there is reason or cause to have hope, it is, the progressives who are challenging this system. It is in people like Ayanna Pressley and, Rashida Tlaib and
Antonio
Alexandria
Reid.
Ocasio-Cortez. So I do think that, right, leaders are starting to get in place, and hopefully we'll be able to push out the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, the Schumers, the Buttigieg's, the Obamas,
All these negotiators and apologists
But I just feel
and
a difference. I feel different
accommodators.
because the gig is up. The young people
Gig
know
is
the
up.
gig is up. They know. We didn't know. We were stuck in neoliberalism. We didn't know what hit us, Paul. And we got
True.
manipulated. But now the young people, it's not like that. The gig is friggin' up. They know what's going on. And so I just feel like there can be change. But I just don't see it with Trump for 4 more years, though. I'm scared that will not allow change. And I don't like Biden, and I'm not for Biden. But I'm okay. I just think there's a much better chance for more progressives and progressives that'll fight against their own party if they get elected locally. That's how I see it.
I think there's a lot of merit to that. I really do believe that. Because the progressives are much more knowledgeable about Biden than we were Obama, it gives us the ability to be prepared to fight on contact, on site. So it really depends. Bernie Sanders has been a letdown. I'll continue to reiterate that because, again, he's supposed to be that voice that continues to rile us up and continue to rile up the other politicians that are progressive. So if Bernie Sanders is going to be absent on that, I think it's up to us in some respect to make sure that flame.
Did you read their climate plan? I mean, it's something. It's something. Bernie is pushing from the inside somehow. Yes. He's a disappointment, but I still have excitement.
Yeah,
he's pushing Biden.
The Democrats, he knows this, and we've been through this before, so it's important to remember the history. But we saw that, in 2007, 2008, or whatever, Nancy Pelosi put together a climate, panel or committee or whatever. So we got to be alert that, to some, degree, the Democrats are going to employ these mirages of looking like they're.
Yeah, but everybody's much more woke. 2008, they weren't. Not like now. Look at you.
So we'll have to see. Well, I wasn't asleep in 2008. I was fully aware of what was going on. In terms of seeing the change in Obama. And I was very worried that when it was first said that he was the first candidate to pass $1 billion in campaign contributions, I realized, I put that together. Yeah. Nobody spends $1 billion. Corporations don't spend $1 billion on campaign contributions unless they're trying to get something back. And I was a Republican, actually, at the time. So I was actually already skeptical of Obama, but for much different reasons than the Republican Party. I was a Ron Paul Republican. But, be that as it may,
Ron Paul.
I see that this is an ongoing struggle, that, our best hope is ourselves. That's what it's always been.
Well, it seems to me, I work with a lot of young people, and I do find some commonalities. They show very little interest in putting into their 401ks. They're, for the most part, not home owners. They live for the moment. They're not really looking far ahead as far as putting away. It seems like they're very much aware that our existing programs are shams and not worth investing in. So we need somebody charismatic. Bernie, I'm afraid, his day is done. His past. We need a charismatic figure to come on and lead.
Yeah,
you know,
not
and
Kamala Harris either.
I think a Nina Turner. I really do believe that Nina Turner. There's something to me about her, even though I'm not a religious person. But there's something about her tonality, the way she expresses herself, her power, just the energy that emanates from her, is really, I think, capable of moving a lot of people, particularly the type of people we need to be moving.
Yeah. Do you think she's going to run for another office so she can say under her belt she's got some, maybe a federal office, got some more experience? Because that's what I have seen the more centrists say about Nina, that she was only in the Ohio State, establishment, and that, well, not establishment. She was
Yeah,
certainly
but the
not.
establishment are idiots, right? Because they said
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg was yeah, he's ready. So we don't, to say that Pete Buttigieg, a mayor, is more qualified than a state senator, is ridiculous.
Good comeback.
Um,
Yay.
but yeah, I mean, you can always see through the establishment arguments. They just throw up anything and hope that it sticks.
Yeah, there
But
you
I
go.
think Nina
You're right.
Turner. I think Nina Turner. I mean, look at Donald Trump. I mean, he's totally out whack. So if
Oh my
Donald Trump
God.
did what he did, I mean, I won't even compare Nina Turner
Well,
to
you
Trump.
know me,
But
I could go off on
I think
Donald
that
Trump,
Nina
which I
Turner
won't.
could be a excellent. She does have some name recognition, at least among the Bernie-crats. And I think that could really blow up into something. And also, she's a black woman. Let's be real. And I think she's the type of black woman that a lot of people are afraid of in this country.
Yeah, she got spunk, personality. She knows how to get everybody into what she's saying. She can whip up the crowd. She's inspirational. I hear you.
Sounds
I
like you,
saw her.
Sandy. Yeah.
No, I saw her in D.C. in 2000. I think it was 2016. So, I mean, She's just an inspiration. And wouldn't it be a dream? Who would be your dream team, Paul and Tony? Do you have one?
Paul, you want to take that one first?
She sounds good to me. I'm not familiar with her, but I like what I hear. So I'll have to read up more.
Yeah.
But Sandy, you were saying this was going to be kept to an hour. Are we
Oh, we're there.
continue? I had to get rid of the cat. The
We're
cat was
there.
destroying my house blind by blind. So I had to get
Well,
rid of the
it's been
cat.
great. I will let Antonio take the end. If I don't know if anybody wants any questions or anything, but thank you guys. Tony, I'm going to sign off. You can bring up the rear. Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Rising Tide. I'm down. I'm out. Tony, take it away.
Thanks. Well, thank you guys. We've hit our hour mark. We had a fascinating conversation about social programs, the need for social programs, the fact that they're under assault. And really, the hope is that we do get progressives in Congress. I was joined here with my friend Paul from the Reality Report, and Sandy, our gracious host here from the Environmental Coffee House. This is the Rising Tide, Antonio Reid, and thank you again, Paul, for being here.
Thank you very much, Antonio. It's my pleasure.
All right, and good night.
End with the video.